This is the front line between democracy and dictatorship. This remote Taiwanese island, dwarfed by mainland China, about 2 kilometres over there. The region is a powder keg. Xi Jinping has threatened to take Taiwan by force. And if so, that would lead to war, extending far beyond these shores. They're called the Kinmen Islands. While mainland Taiwan is 160 kilometres away from the Chinese coast, from here, China is plain to see. And this place is no stranger to Chinese aggression. In the 1950s, Kinmen was heavily attacked during the second Taiwan Strait crisis. Bunkers from back then still dot the island today.
In 1954 and 1958, in both occasions, China just launched the artillery shells on Quemoy without even sending a single troops to land there, but it still caused tremendous damage.
Ever since, Taiwan has maintained a military presence here. So would Kinmen Island be the first place to go down?
We do not know, because that really depends on how China will do.
In the capital, Taipei, locals are also uncertain about what the future holds.
I believe if China attack Taiwan very soon, maybe one day or finish.
But most agree on one thing. At some point in time, China will make a move on Taiwan.
I believe that it is inevitable.
You believe it will be inevitable, that there will be forced conflict?
Yes, as long as Xi Jinping is still assuming office.
There's a concern about the wars happening probably in the future years.
A war happening here?
Yeah.
There is concern about that?
Yeah.
You have that concern?
I have the concern.
So I think our freedom will be taken away, just like what they did to Hong Kong.
Why do you think that?
Because I think ultimately they want to control Taiwan, including its politics and all aspects of life, the dissemination of information and so on.
Hands up, who would fight? Who would fight? Nearly everyone.
Least thing we're ready to do is to use force. And that is one of the reasons why China has been so patient. But we can never rule out our option to use other means. So when necessary, when compelled, we are ready to use all necessary means. As to what does it mean by all necessary means, you can use your imagination.
Against all this talk of conflict in our region, Australia's Defence Force is under intense scrutiny. It's called the Defence Strategic Review, a once-in-a-generation look at whether our ADF is fit for purpose. In other words, is it ready for war? And for the Albanese government, it's a critical moment, because decisions that are made now will decide how we meet security challenges in the years ahead.
Australia needs to be in a stronger position in the future than we find ourselves today. That's why we're doing the Defence Strategic Review.
Yes, Prime Minister, this is the product of 6 months of work, and I think it addresses all the terms of reference, and we're very pleased with that.
Thank you. This is the most significant piece of work in 35 years, at least.
The Albanese government has got to come up with a strategy, figure it all out, and just do it and pay for it.
Regardless of whatever kind of blowback might come from the public?
Well, I think ultimately the public will come alongside. But at the moment, no government is putting to them that we've got a significantly increased defence. And those that do say, oh, yeah, China, yeah. But what does it mean? OK, now is the time for real plans and real expenditure.
0003. Over.
When it comes to defending Australia, Jim Molan says today's military is simply not up to the job.
Many of us in the military, over about the last 15 years or so, have well and truly seen that we were losing our conventional warfare capabilities. We have a defence force which has never been better for the kind of wars we've fought for the last 80 years. That is where we could choose when we go, what we take. We don't have to actually win the war, we just have to be there. We can choose when we come home. Well, those days are pretty well past. They might occur again, but it'll be subsidiary to the main strategic challenge, which is defence of liberal democracy in our part of the world with our American allies.
Andrew Hastie is another who knows about being in the firing line. He also says our defensive capabilities are in need of a major reboot.
Sure, we can deploy as part of a larger coalition, but could we defend ourselves for an extended period of time against a peer adversary or someone even bigger than ourselves? I'm not so sure. And for that, we need to have a strong deterrence. And that's, I think, what we're missing right now in our Defence Force capability.
So what do we need to deter right now?
The way I like to put it, I always come back to the schoolyard. We've all been bullied. You need to make sure that anyone who bullies you knows there will be a cost. They'll get a punch in the nose. And I think what we need to build, therefore, is that deterrence.
And that deterrence will come at a cost. The current annual defence budget is $48.7 billion, or 1.96% of GDP. Many argue that to properly defend Australia, spending has to dramatically increase.
The Australian government needs to talk to the Australian people about the kind of threats it faces. I think the last couple of years we've done some of that, in particular with the Chinese coercive activities. But it needs a more compelling narrative to convince the Australian people that they need to spend more on defence.
We're never going to be able to match the Chinese military machine, though, are we?
Never.
But how far short are we? What, in your view, do we need?
I think we need to at least double our defence expenditure.
Others have said 4%. Would you go that high?
Again, you can't really put a figure on it. I would say we must spend what is necessary to secure our country based on the strategy that we lay out.
But as things stand at the moment, it seems like 2% is not enough.
I don't think 2% is enough. It needs to go up.
I think it is important that we are having a conversation with the Australian people, which makes it clear that we live in a world which is more fragile than we have for a very long period of time, and that what that is going to require is a defence posture and a defence force which is in truth going to cost more than it has in the past. We're going to need to increase our defence spending.
The late Senator Jim Molan had suggested it should be up near 4%. That's how serious the threat is on our doorstep.
Yeah, we take what Jim Molan says seriously. Not for a moment do we take any of this for granted. I mean, there's a lot of money being spent on capability which needs to be explained to the Australian people.
The growing shadow China is casting over the Indo-Pacific has already seen one major country lift its military spend. Japan will double its defence budget within 5 years. At $320 billion US, that'll make it the third largest in the world, exceeded only by America and China.
It is natural for Japanese people to be awakened to the new security reality facing us.
Do you think they are awake?
They are. Yes, that is why, this idea, new national security, policy strategy is strongly supported. This is an unprecedented development in Japanese national defense strategy.
Building Fortress Australia will not only be expensive, it will also mean convincing the Australian public that it needs to be done. Do you feel like the Defence Strategic Review should shock the country into where we're at the moment and what's needed to be done to get us ready for something that we don't want anyway, but it's best to be prepared.
That's right. I think the DSI, if it does its job well, will educate the Australian people. It won't be just limited to people in Canberra or the public service, but all Australians will have a better understanding of Australia's strategic circumstances and that of the larger Indo-Pacific region.
Not talking about just how many dollars, talking about where are our assets? Are they the right assets in order to defend ourselves in 2023 and beyond? So you've already seen substantial announcements from the Commonwealth in areas such as increased missile defence capability, but we'll have more announcements arising out of the review.
What do you expect the Defence Strategic Review to tell us?
I am very cynical of it. I see that parts of the Defence Strategic Review are being leaked to journalists. If you come out and say, the Defence Strategic Review wants missiles and drones, hang on. Are we only going to fight one kind of war? The kind of war that requires drones and missiles? OK, if that's the case, we can get rid of the land army and put all that money into drones and missiles. And of course, that's come out as well. People are leaking to journalists in relation to that. So I don't hold great high hopes for it, but I pray that they will get it right.
While Australia's defensive future remains to be seen, the people of Taiwan are already taking matters into their own hands. Just in the past 6 months, private shooting lessons have nearly quadrupled.
I'm sure that most people don't want to go to war. I also don't want to go to war. But in the unfortunate event of this really happening, I will be mentally prepared.
Is there any way reunification could be peaceful?
I think the only way that unification is going to be peaceful is when the Taiwanese people thinks that unifying with China is good for us. But I don't see that yet. Taiwan is already a democracy, and all major decisions need to go through democratic means. And for right now, the Taiwanese people see one country, two system model is not admirable. And in the public opinion surveys, one after another show that the people would prefer status quo and not unification with China. So with the Chinese government continuing to want to superimpose their one country, two system model on Taiwan, I don't think it's going to work.
If war does come to our part of the world, there is one thing we can be certain of: our alliance with America and the responsibility that comes with it.
Australia is one of the best friends we have in the Pacific and in the world, for that matter. And that if there is a decision between the United States and Australia that we are going to work together in order to defend Taiwan, or if we're going to work together to confront North Korea, or if we're going to work together to confront China, I am very confident that the United States and Australia will work together to determine how best each country can contribute to whatever security mission we decide is important for both countries.
I'd say to every Australian, what we take for granted in the sovereignty and freedom and prosperity of this country should never be taken for granted. I understand the day-to-day issues that Australians face, but governments must lead the Australian people, and they must lead them to understand what we have and being able to assure the Australian people that we are defendable.